Hey there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andrew Clark, and today I want to do something a little bit different. So a lot of you guys who have subscribed to the channel recently probably know me a little bit more as a gear guy or a gear reviewer. But when I first started this channel earlier this year, I actually spent a lot more time doing lessons. And with the year coming to a close, it just kind of felt appropriate for me to kind of go back to my roots and teach you guys something. So what I'm going to be showing you is an alternative way to play the chords in the key of G major. And learning these new shapes is also going to kind of double as a bit of a theory lesson as well. They're kind of going to be tied together. It's going to be pretty quick. It's going to be simple. It's not complicated at all. The theory is very, very basic, but it's stuff that you definitely want to know. Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is the Nashville number system. You've probably heard it talked about a whole bunch of times, and in my previous lessons, I've definitely talked about it a whole bunch. But basically the idea is that every single note in a major scale, whatever major scale you choose, for our sake, we're going to be choosing the G major scale, it's going to have a number attached to it. So for example, in the key of G, as we go through our G major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we arrive back at 1, right? Because that's an octave and we arrive at the same note. Now from our G major scale, we also have the key of G major, which is essentially just different combinations of those exact notes forming chords. So from our G major scale, we have corresponding chords. So with our first note being a G, that means our 1 chord is going to be a G major. Then our 2 chord is going to be an A minor. 3 chord is B minor. 4 chord is C major. 5 chord is D major. 6 chord is E minor. And then our last chord is our 7 chord. And it's a diminished chord. It's a chord you're not going to use very often, but in the key of G major, it's an F sharp diminished. And then we return back at our G major. Now the numbers, no matter what key you're in, 1 is always going to be major, 4 and 5 are always going to be major, then 2, 3, and 6 are always going to be minor, no matter what key you're in, as long as we're talking about diatonic chords. And then finally, our 7th chord is always going to be that weird diminished chord. And in typical pop, rock, country music, you're really not going to see it that often. Okay, so now what we're going to do to kind of transform these basic open chords, which you should probably already know at this point, is we're going to start with the 4 chord in this key, which is a C major. So you're probably familiar with a C major chord. It looks like this, very straightforward. So there are 2 different things we're going to do to these chords to kind of make them sound cool. First thing is we're going to incorporate some open strings. And then the second thing is we're going to turn them into inversions. So as far as open strings go, when you play a C major chord, what we can actually do is we can leave the G, B, and E string. We can leave them all open. Now it's obviously going to change the qualities of the chord a little bit. So instead of having this, you're going to have this. Now the second step is to actually add a note below. So typically when you play your C major chord, you're going to be muting this low E string, right? So what we're going to do instead is we're going to add a note below it. So to play this, you actually need to change your fingering a little bit. You got to incorporate that pinky, and we're going to add this note below it. And it's a G note for our C chord, which is the 5th of the chord. So with every single chord we play here, we're going to be adding the 5th below the chord. So instead of the lowest note being a C, the lowest note for our C chord is actually going to be a G. Now this theory, again, it's not going to matter that much. It's more about the shapes and the sounds, but this is what our final shape is going to look like. It's going to sound like this. So it's a lot more full. So instead of this, or even this, we're going to take that off. We're going to add the G below. We get a very rich, deep sounding C chord and what is actually called a C major 7, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Now here's where the magic comes in with this shape. So a lot like bar chords where you kind of can play the same shape altering for major or minor, right? If you're going up the fretboard in a different key, you can major and minor E shapes with the bar. We don't have to bar it all because of the key we're in. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this exact shape, so these 3 fingers, leaving this one open right here, and we're going to slide it up 2 frets. This is our D chord. So we go from C, our 4 chord, to our 5 chord. And then we can actually keep going, so we can go up to our 6, but our 6 is always minor. So what that means is, that sounds terrible. So to make that adjustment, we just take this and we shift it back 1 fret. So we get this, just like that. Now to repeat, we've got our 4 chord, got our 5 chord, got our 6 chord. Now we get to our 7 chord, which we're not going to use that much, so don't really worry about it too much, but it would look like this. It's the one change to the shape. And then we can keep going. We can go up to our 1 chord because obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we get back to 1. So this becomes our G major chord. So instead of this, we get this, kind of a cool, mysterious, very different sounding G chord. And we can carry on. So that's our 1, then we've got our 2, which is an A minor. And then we can keep going to our 3, which is our B minor. And then we get all the way up back to our 4. So you can see we've made an octave. And now what you can do is you can go. So now we've got all these differently voiced chords. Because we are keeping the same shape as we're moving up and down the fretboard, each chord has a slightly different quality. It's not like they're all major 7 chords or anything like that. They all kind of change as you move. We're not gonna worry about the theory. We're just kind of looking at the sounds, like I said. One of the things that's really cool about using chord shapes like this is that I feel like it helps you internalize the whole number system really well. Because instead of having to think of a new shape for every chord and really jump around the strings, instead you're going in a nice straight line. You're really going 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If your fretboard was infinitely long, you could just keep going forever. And as long as you're remembering that your 1, 4, and 5 are always major, your 2, 3, and 6 are always minor, and then you have that diminished chord with the 7, then as you jump into other keys, you're still gonna have an understanding of how diatonic chords work with each other. And you can experiment and play around with all different types of chord progressions that you're used to playing with your regular open chords. So let's say you play worship music, or you wanna play a pop song or something like that, and you already know what the chords are. Let's say G, D, E minor, C, very standard chord progression. You can try incorporating these new chords. You could play. And as you get more and more comfortable, you could start making little alterations to the chords to bring out even more flavor. And it's just kind of like a new palette for you to play around with. And it's also super comfy because you've got like all those open strings to lean back on. It's very easy chord shapes to play. You can feel free to add this finger back here when you play your C. So instead of this, same with the D. You can actually do it with the minor chords too. So it's not always going to sound as good. You can keep going. These chord shapes definitely have a distinct flavor, and they're very like wide range because you're playing the lowest string and the highest string, so they're not gonna work in every single application. So it's gonna be kind of up to you to use your ear when you wanna use these chords, or you wanna use a smaller shape. Maybe use some shapes that don't sound quite so indie or ambient. But yeah, I just hope for some of you, it's just something new that you can try out and play around with these shapes and come up with your own stuff. Now, there are actually other chord shapes for other keys that I can talk about. So if you're interested, make sure you let me know, and we can talk about those other keys that incorporate inversions and using open strings to be able to play similar shapes up and down the fretboard. But for today, I just wanted to keep it simple, focus on the key of G major, just so that you kind of have one main takeaway from this lesson. So I'm just gonna throw a few effects on my guitar and just kind of improvise with the chords, just to kind of show you what you can do with them. All right, so that's gonna be it for this little video. Please let me know in the comments below if you enjoy this style of lesson. I love making gear videos, but I really enjoy making videos like this as well. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and please also consider subscribing to the channel. I release new guitar content every single week. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.